Hi, everyone. It's Karen Capello, and I'm here with Josh Vanada. And Josh, I'd love to have you introduce yourself a little bit. We're going to talk about Ask Me Anything. You've got a few questions for me, but tell us a little bit about what you do.
Fantastic. Well, thanks for setting this up so we can interact with you. It's great, Karen. I am a leadership and business growth coach. So I serve as a strategic advisor and do coaching for CEOs and their leadership teams. I focus particularly in areas of transition. So either leadership transitions that are going on, business model pivots, ownership changes, and helping the team to really regain clarity, increase their performance, and do it all without the overwhelm.
Beautiful. And I'm sure that there's a lot of need for your services these days, Josh. I love how you shared your what I call the power of one so quickly and easily. So I know you had some questions for me today, and we can just dive in if you like.
I'd love that. I recently started my practice about a year ago. And one of the things from one of your previous workshops that really stuck out to me that I was like, if I ever had the chance to ask Karen something, I would ask her this. So we'll start with this question and see where it goes. You have a natural gift for finding ways to open up possibility about just even the prospect of coaching. And from a kind of a business development standpoint and an engagement standpoint with folks, I just like to chat more with you about just about that. It's something I've observed in you, and I'd just love to hear some of the insights and things you've learned over time.
Oh my gosh, thank you, Josh. I didn't expect this. So when you say, so give me a like a really quick question about this because I got caught up in my heart about the natural gifts.
So I think the question for me is, how do you talk about coaching with others in a way that opens up possibility?
Beautiful. I love this question. And I will say, you know, everybody talks about this elevator speech. You probably heard it. You need to have an elevator speech. People are always saying, what can I say when people ask me what I do? All kinds of things like that. And one way of doing this, and one way of talking to people about coaching is when people ask me, "Hey, Karen, what do you do?" I say, "I work with the best clients in the world." That's my statement. That's my elevator pitch. And they'll all look at me and go, "Hey, wait, who are your clients?" Right? People ask that always. And then I'll say, "Well, I was just speaking with a client today. Say you were my client, John. I was just speaking with a client today who works with businesses that are in transition, that are going through all this stuff. He's just amazing, and in the last year, he's made six figures doing this, and it's so he anything is possible. So what I do is I will talk about client results when
Mhm.
I talk about my clients. Or I could say, I was just speaking with a client yesterday who had her first 5-figure month in coaching because she was able to work with leaders who are having these difficult conversations and helping them through this. Like, those are the kind of things that I'll share. So if I share client results, kind of like a mini case study. And especially if someone in front of me is kind of the before picture of my client, then they're going to be really interested in coaching. Now, when I first started coaching and I didn't have a lot of client results, I would, in my mindset was, I'm going to promote coaching. I'm not going to promote myself. So I would start talking about how amazing coaching was, when I was a leader, and this is an absolutely true story. I didn't have a coach, and I left corporate America saying I will never manage people again. It's way too hard. If I would have had a coach, I would have been able to manage people, and it wouldn't have been so hard for me. And by
Mm.
the way, my employees loved me, but I always felt like I was pulled in so many different directions in management. And having a coaching background would have really helped me. So I share stories, share results of clients, and those kind of things. Not an elevator speech. And I think that really, and also you and I just mentioned before we started this call essence energy, right?
Yeah.
So every person has, I think, an essence energy where they are just in their sweet spot. And so the other part of this is, in addition to what I say, is who I'm being. And I make sure that I get into my essence energy before I talk about anything about coaching, so that when I talk about it, I'm glowing. And that
Mm.
draws people to coaching. And it's not about even what I say. The essence energy is probably even more important.
That's really helpful. I've recently joined a networking group, and the part of the foundation is built on just storytelling and sharing what's going on.
Mhm.
And I love that because number one, I think it's just true to who I am because I think that my clients are the real heroes. They're doing the work, and I think that that's to be able to showcase them is just it's honoring to them. And I think it's a great way for people to understand exactly what coaching is like. So thank you for kind of teasing that out and explaining that. That's super helpful.
Yeah, as soon as you said my clients are the real heroes, your face lit up, Josh. People see
Hmm.
that.
Yeah, that's good. That's a good observation. Thank you.
Love that.
So my next question for you is with regards to price. Um, as I mentioned, I started my practice about a year ago, and so I'm curious how you have figured out when to propose a client, and then navigating some of the challenges around price or the objections you get. Things like, "Oh, I couldn't afford that," or "Let me think about it," or things like that. I was wondering if you could talk through a little bit about how you've navigated the kind of that part of the process.
Oh, this is a great question too. You have wonderful questions, Josh. So can I ask you a question about this?
Sure.
So if you take if a client of yours is going through a business is going through transition, and they so there's a lot of different decisions to be made, right? And especially if this is like mergers and acquisitions and people are being let go, there's a lot of things going on there. What do you think you could, if you were coaching somebody through this, even maybe a 6 month coaching engagement, what do you think you could save them in terms of hours of bad decisions, or too much work, or not thinking things through? How many hours do you think you could save them?
I mean, depending on on the size of the organization, but if you had just a solopreneur, um, I guarantee it's 20, 30 hours, um, just for a solopreneur. If you multiply that out times a $10 million business, it's hundreds.
Hundreds, yeah. And so let's just take the solopreneur 20 hours. And how much is their time worth, do you think, per hour?
Depending upon the organization, I mean, hundreds of dollars an hour, certainly.
Certainly. So maybe $300 an hour
Hmm.
times 20 hours. Okay, so now where are we at? 6,000?
Right.
And that's the most conservative number. The most conservative. So what I try to do is I try to look at the return on investment. And I could ask questions like this of my potential client. How many hours do you think it's taking you? How many hours could you save? How much time or money could you save with making better decisions, with really looking at this? And coaching can help you with that. So we talk about that before the pricing. So an
Mhm.
objection does not come up. We get ahead of this. Also, if you're doing any videos like on LinkedIn or any marketing, you could also talk about, most businesses, like even if we took the snippet of what you just said here, it could be, 100 times that $10 million company. This is how much is at stake. So if you're in a bigger company and maybe there's, $100,000 at stake, and you could say, well, I'll coach you for 50,000. Now they can see that they can get a $50,000 return on their coaching right away, and then whatever happens in the future is even, icing on the cake, as they say. So I think how to navigate the objection of price is not to let it come up at all by asking these questions and by sharing this information ahead of time. Each one of us coaches needs to look at what is the return on investment. For instance, I do these groups, quick start intensive groups, and right now the cost of the group is $7,500 for 3 months. And we have been doing these groups for over 4 years. The average that coaches make is somewhere between 25 and 30,000 in three
Mm,
months. So if so I'm very clear on what my ROI is. And there are still people who, if they have mindset stuff or if they have things going on, they'll say, I can't do it, or timing. But price wise, I can say if you pay 7,500, the chances of you gaining 25 to 30,000 are high. That makes it easier for people to say yes.
mm,
Because a lot of times people just sell coaching as kind of this, even people can't connect the dots to the pricing of what they're going to gain, of what they're going to get out of coaching. And they think coaching, like they'll say, oh, I don't have time for coaching, because they think coaching is going to take time. But really, coaching is going to give them back time and give them back money. So the other thing is, there's a book called Persuasion, and what in that book it says that if you mention a higher number in a conversation and then you mention a lower number, people feel like they're getting a deal. So if you say, it could cost you 100 hours, and let's just even say at $200 an hour, that's 200,000 dollars. And I'm messing with my math here, but if that is true, you could say, well, this is probably worth 200,000. Now, I'm not going to charge you that. My coaching program, we're going to work together for 3 months, and I'm going to charge you $10,000. Now in their brain, they've heard the 200,000, they hear 10,000, it feels like a really great deal. Whereas if you don't say the 200,000, you go, okay, we're going to charge you $10,000 for 3 months of coaching. People are like, huh? That sounds like a lot, right? Because it's out of context. Is this making sense, Josh?
yeah, I've been taking notes over here. It's super helpful. I like handling the price proactively. I think that makes a lot of sense. And it's businesses. As you started out asking me the question, even it's very easy to quantify.
Mm-hmm.
How many hours somebody's working on a particular project and how much they're making, and when you add in their benefits and everything else, what's at stake. So that's really helpful, and I love that, and I like being out in front of it as well, as opposed to, I think, what kind of waiting for someone to ask for a proposal. Being including it in the conversation, not in a kind of an aggressive way, but in a way to be able to use examples. So by the time you get to a proposal, it's been fairly natural.
Right. And, we were just talking about proposal in our group coaching yesterday. And this is how I feel about proposals, even though you didn't ask. Never give a proposal that hasn't been co-created with the
Yeah.
potential client. So your proposal should just be a 1 to 2 page summary of what you have created together. Because I see a lot of times coaches go in and some a lot of times, maybe 50% of the time, when people say send me a proposal, it's kind of a brush off. It's kind of like,
Yeah, that's
okay,
fair.
send me a proposal, because it's easy for them to say just do that. But if they create the proposal with you and you get kind of this conceptual agreement up front, hey, this sounds pretty good, I will send you something so that we can both look at it and make sure that we're on the same page. The proposal should only be a summary of what has already been decided.
So let's talk a little bit more about that, because I like that idea and that makes good sense to me. So in the conversation where you're talking with somebody about co-creating a proposal, um,
Mhm.
is it something along the lines of, are you getting into you thinking solutions and talking to them like this is kind of how we work through that? I'm thinking of, say a strategic planning client or something along those lines, and explaining all that through. So when I'm sending them the proposal, it's more of kind of a memorializing of what's already been discussed.
Yes, and very simple. Like, here's the problem we talked about. Here's the challenge that your group is going through. Here is a solution that we talked about. A 6-month coaching program that involves A, B, and C. Here's what it would cost. And one thing I like to put in the proposal is I and this I learned from Alan Weiss, who has a great book called $1 Million Proposals. And he says the same thing about we do not work on an hourly rate. We work by project. If this goes over into another scope, we will talk to you about that. But this is what we charge. And I
Mm,
like that because as a consumer of coaching, I like to know this is what I'm going to pay. We always get nervous when we hire lawyers because we have no idea how many hours this is going to take. And I almost don't even want to say hello, how's your kids? Because I know I'm on the clock, right? But I don't like to do that. So for me, if somebody says, look, here, this is what we're going to do. Here's a scope. Here's what it's going to cost you by the project. If there is scope creep, if you want other things, we can talk about that at the time, but this is what it's going to be. I think people are so relieved to have that kind of pricing by project.
so almost like an expected outcome in the sense of like a deliverable um,
Mhm.
type thing. That's helpful. I like that. I like the clarity around that. That's good.
Yeah, and
Good.
it makes it easier for people to say yes. Clarity, right?
Yeah, it does. Exactly. I think early on when I was proposing in some of my to some potential clients, I don't think I had the timing right. I wasn't sure how to frame the conversation. And I think that's just part of learning
Mhm.
for me, as a beginning coach. So that this is super helpful. And then when you're coming in as someone um, who's promising to deliver clarity in a strategic plan or something like that, being clear in the conversation is really just it's integrity, and I
Mhm.
like that. It brings integrity to my process and to what I'm doing all the way through, which I think is super important because, as you know, as a coach, a lot of what we're working on is integrity. It's aligning our desired outcome, our actions with our desired outcomes.
Absolutely. And the other thing that needs to be in that proposal is here's what we're going to give you, and here's what we need from you.
Okay.
So
Yep.
we need, like, there's criteria, right? We need you to show up for your coaching sessions, whatever all those things are, so that people will be able to do their part. And so, because if we're talking about results and outcomes, it's not just up to us. We can do everything
Right.
we do, but we need their part of it too.
That's so true. So I think maybe we have time for one more question.
Yes, yes.
Perfect. So my last question is, um, showing up, you talk about essence energy. I think showing up to meetings and engagements without thinking about the outcome and just being in a position of continuing to serve rather than to please. What are some of the best practices you found to make sure that you're showing up? You call it your essence energy.
Mhm,
Showing up fully for who we are, so that the people on the other side they're getting our very best.
mhm.
And as business owners and coaches, we're not thinking about what's going to come of this, but we're truly just delivering what's best for that other person. What are some best tips you found?
Ah, I love this. So I'm going to preface this by saying I went to 16 years of Catholic school. So self care was not ever taught. If you had to use the restroom, you waited till a break. when
Yeah,
when
I went to Catholic school too.
right,
I understand. I'm tracking with you.
right. So self care is actually the answer to this, Josh. And there are many different ways of self care. Physical. So make sure you know what your best physical self-care is. For me, it's sleep. For me, if I don't get my sleep, I'm like, it's like kryptonite to Superman. If I do get
Mhm.
my sleep, I am all there. I had a friend of mine who ran every day. She was a runner. If I ran every day, I would be on the floor. I'd be exhausted. If she didn't run, it bothered her. So to know what your physical self-care is, intellectual self-care. So what are you feeding your mind with? What are you doing that is really causing you to be at your best intellectually? For me, I like to listen to a lot of self help and self development audios. There's a ton of them on YouTube. The brain entrainment ones where you put your headphones on. I love that kind of stuff because it really it increases my essence energy. The next one is emotional self care, making sure that I am emotionally strong, that I don't have anything really crazy going on in the background, that all my relationships are drama free as much as possible. I mean, we're walking around on this earth, so there's going to be a little drama, but a lot less drama. And then also spiritual. And I know, Josh, you have a strong spiritual background, and I am very much into, it's not about any kind of religion, but it's about a relationship with something that is much bigger than ourselves, and understanding that and feeling that spirit that is part of our world. I think if we look at those four things, ways of self care, and make sure that we are doing all of this and keeping ourselves really in the best position possible, then when I walk in and somebody says, Karen, I don't want to work with you, I go, oh, rejection is protection. I'm okay. Nothing, no big deal.
Yeah.
But if I'm having a bad day and I really want to work with them and they say no, then emotionally it's going to drag me down. So I think self-care is a big part of getting and staying into essence energy. What do you think?
I think that makes a lot of sense. I think also, I think there's a lot of creep that happens when, if somebody's starting a new business, for instance, and they're not having a lot of conversations, and they're looking for that one particular way. So I think in some ways, it's certainly what you're saying. We, in order to bring our best selves, we actually have to be our best selves. And then I think there's the second piece, which is when you're building something, action is your friend. Going out and
Mm-hmm.
taking action and having the opportunity to, as I tell my clients, we either win or we learn. The only place where we fail is if there was nothing we learned from that. And we can learn something from everything. So I think for me, what I've found is action is really good and practice is good. I think vulnerability is also good. Even just jumping on this call, right? I mean, this is going to be put out on YouTube, and I'm asking questions that are personal in nature to my own practice, and the world's going to see them. But I'm certain that people who are going to listen to this will go, "Oh, that's an interesting question. I had a similar thought." And I think the connection that comes from being in community and taking the action to reach out and be engaged is super powerful. And I think that community piece is really related to self care. Being around people who love you for who you are and they accept you. I was listening to a fascinating podcast from a Harvard professor who is also a clinical psychologist. He used to head up McLean Hospital here in Boston. And he was talking about just being the type of person who is assured. And he said a lot of times that happens by having relationships with people who expect nothing of us. Going back to our relationship with our parents, just wanting them to look at us and say, I love you for who you are. I'm so glad you're alive. Um, and that stuff sounds, I think it's funny, some people would go, gee, I think that sounds a little soft. But when we're assured like that, and you talked about self-care, we can go out there and a rejection isn't a no to our personhood. It's the
Mhm.
solution we're providing just might not work for that particular individual for where they're at in life. And that truly is okay.
Yeah, I love what you said there, and I do believe in action also. We could sit in our office forever and create all this great stuff, but until we get out there and interact with people, I'm a big one on conversations. Conversations create cash. And in a coaching business, having all kinds of conversations and learning from people about what their challenges are, about what the results they want, about what they're afraid of, about what their strengths are. All of these things will really support our business and ourselves.
Yeah, it's so true. I think you're right. And listening, I love that conversations create cash. I wrote that down. But being out there, I remember in my corporate career, and maybe you had a similar experience. It's easy to become detached from the front line because we're not in conversations with customers or frontline employees or whatever the case may be. And I found every time when I re-engaged with that, I actually became a more effective leader. I had more empathy. And not only did I have more empathy, but I had a better sense of the real struggle. It was no longer an academic problem. It was one for which I was going to roll my sleeves up. So I love that. And I think being out there in conversation helps.
Well, this conversation has been delightful, Josh. Would you just remind everyone, if anybody wants to get a hold of you, could you remind them of your website or your LinkedIn profile, or how could they get a hold of you?
Yeah, thank you for the opportunity to do that. So I do have a website. It's Josh-Vanada. That's VANADA.com. I'm also active on Facebook, Twitter, Facebook, LinkedIn, and also on Instagram. So you can find me in all three places.
All right. Well, Josh, thank you so much for the questions. And I really have appreciated this conversation. And I'm sure that coaches everywhere will be learning. I appreciate your vulnerability. It's been great speaking with you today.
You too. I'm better for the conversation. Thanks, Karen.
Thank you.